Imagine a man who built a kingdom out of rust and dust, only to watch it shatter under the weight of his own choices. In the spring of 2024, Drew Pritchard, the larger-than-life star of the hit series Salvage Hunters, did the unthinkable. He auctioned off every prized relic, tool, and trinket he had collected over decades. A fairground boat that had thrilled generations, vintage signs whispering tales of forgotten towns, even fragments once looted from Buckingham Palace gone. 620 items sold, raising over $800,000. Yet it wasn't the dizzying total that stung his fans, it was the profound sense of loss playing out on a global stage. This wasn't a savvy business pivot or a triumphant finale. It felt like surrender, a final, heartbreaking goodbye. As the hammer fell on the last lot in that hushed auction hall, millions of viewers around the world watched a legend unravel. News anchors replayed clips of Drew's triumphs, him wading through collapsing barns, prying a century-old fireplace mantle from an impending wrecking ball, followed by footage of him nodding through tears as he relinquished each piece. To understand how a boy who once scavenged kingdoms from scraps wound up selling his soul, we must step back to a damp winter in Conwy, North Wales, in 1970. Drew was born into hardship. His parents ran a tiny corner shop that barely scraped by in a town where coal fires were a luxury and wallets were always thin. Even before he could ride a bike, he began to see value in the discarded, bottle caps for currency, broken toys as canvases for restoration, roadside scrap heaps as treasure troves. While other children chased cricket balls across slate-paved streets, Drew prowled flea markets and dumps, his young mind alight with possibility. Neighbors whispered about the strange boy with a weird obsession for junk, but none could dampen his fascination. By age 10, he had already flirted with danger. One afternoon, a careless shift in a towering pile of old iron crushed a beam against his leg. He escaped with a sprained wrist, but that near burial only fanned the flames of his obsession. Photographs from that year show a wiry boy clutching a Second World War-era helmet he discovered under months of dirt, his grin as wild as the stories his grandfather, a World War II veteran, would later tell. Grandfather's tales of clandestine bunkers and smuggled artifacts became Drew's guiding mythology, hidden worlds waiting to be unearthed. At home, hardship had another face. His father, a gifted sign painter, applied real gold leaf to pub boards but developed tremors from chronic lead exposure. 8-year-old Drew watched those hands shake, absorbing a lesson: beauty often exacts a painful toll. By 12, he was pilfering tools from his father's workshop to repair broken toys and discarded furniture. He breathed fumes without knowing the cost, and more than once he woke choking on toxic varnish. In secret, he built a backyard junkyard of stripped bike parts and corroded engine bits, until neighbors complained about rats and noise. When school became a cage rather than a sanctuary, Drew walked away at 16 and landed an apprenticeship at a car restoration garage in Llandudno. He earned barely $2 an hour, but inside that cramped workshop he found his calling. Sparks would arc through dusty air each time he welded a dented Jaguar hood, and the scent of oil and metal soon felt like home. A botched weld in his very first week left a jagged scar on his hand, an indelible mark of sacrifice and grit. With each restored bumper and polished chrome fin, he proved to himself that he could coax life back into forgotten machines, but the garage's under-the-table deals tested his ethics. At 19, a police raid seized $10,000 worth of stolen parts, leaving the crew fractured by accusations. Drew realized that his rescue missions could be tainted by murky dealings. It was a watershed moment. He vowed to build something of his own, untarnished by others' sins. Using profits from weekend flea market flubs and a few honest restorations, he saved enough to buy proper tools. Weeks later, he walked out of the garage for good, determined to forge his own path. By 18, Drew had rented a narrow shop on Conwy's High Street. His first sale there was an abandoned Victorian gas lamp, polished until its brass fixtures gleamed like new. He'd paid $50 and sold it for 3 times that amount, an audacious bargain that startled local dealers. Then a flood struck town, and while neighbors mourned submerged wares, Drew dove in, salvaging antique signs and furniture from rising waters. He delivered rescued pieces back to shopkeepers, earning both profit and hero status. Conwy had found its salvage king. By the time he was 14, Drew's ambitions had grown well beyond cramped scrapyards and flea markets. After every morning class at Conwy High, he would slip away toward the town's old harbor docks, where stacked shipping containers formed a fortress of forgotten treasures. He learned guard patrol schedules and bypassed locked gates, emerging with relics abandoned by merchants, ornate machine parts, cracked porcelainware, even fragments of industrial signage. One cold afternoon, he sneaked onto a silent freighter and pried loose a brass compass from a captain's chest, later selling it for the equivalent of a month's earnings. That single windfall fueled both his bank account and his reputation among local collectors, who soon recognized the relentless teenage scrounger as a force to be reckoned with. Still earning a pittance each week at the car restoration workshop in Llandudno, he treated every spare moment as a chance to scout new locations. Along winding country lanes, he discovered dilapidated mansions slated for demolition. He rescued stained glass panels from shattered windows, apprenticed himself informally to antique dealers, and brokered bargains with demolition crews hungry for extra cash. His razor-sharp eye for hidden value allowed him to spot a centuries-old fireplace mantel beneath layers of soot and peeling paint. He pried it free, hired a local van service, and delivered it to a buyer in Cardiff whose jaw dropped at the mantel's intricate carvings. Despite his growing success, the constant pressure began to weigh on him. He juggled schoolwork he barely cared about, afternoon shifts fixing rusted fenders, and daring salvage runs into half-collapsed barns. His health suffered. He contracted bronchitis after breathing particles from old paint, and more than once he narrowly escaped serious injury when rusted beams gave way underfoot. Still, he refused to stop. Each scrape and fever was a badge of honor, proof that his dreams were worth the risk. At 18, with his formal education behind him, Drew officially launched his own antique and salvage business. He converted a cramped former butcher shop on High Street into a showplace for his finds: battered suitcases, dusty ship lanterns, reclaimed barn beams, and Brunswick billiard tables rescued from defunct pubs. Locals lined his shelves and paid premium prices for pieces they had never believed possible to find. Over the next 2 years, word spread across South Wales about the rising salvage king. He took out modest ads in heritage magazines and joined antique dealer associations, forging connections that would later underwrite his most daring expeditions. Then came the internet. In 2003, while browsing online forums as a customer, Drew realized that global collectors were paying top dollar for unique artifacts. He created his first eBay listing, a tarnished nautical sextant once used by a Welsh merchant marine captain. He posted detailed photographs and a carefully researched provenance narrative. To his shock, bidding climbed far beyond local dealer rates, and the final offer came from a UK collector willing to pay 6 times his expected price. Buoyed by that success, he invested in professional photography equipment, designed a simple website, and cultivated an online presence with exacting descriptions and transparent salvage stories. Suddenly, his market was no longer confined to county lines, it extended from New York to Tokyo. Media attention followed. A regional television crew for a small heritage show arrived unannounced one morning to film a segment at his shop. Cameras clicked as he restored a prized cast-iron radiator plucked from an Edwardian mansion. He spoke passionately about the importance of preserving industrial history, drawing viewers into his mission. When the short broadcast aired, traffic to his website quadrupled overnight. Emails flooded in from museums, private collectors, and curious hobbyists. Offers to collaborate on salvage projects poured in from across the UK. In 2011, a major production company approached him with an irresistible proposition: host a full series dedicated to his salvage hunts. Signed to a multi-season contract on a national network, Drew found himself thrust under bright studio lights and behind the lens of roving camera crews. The show's formula combined high-stakes auctions, suspenseful exploration of derelict sites, and expert negotiation scenes. Audiences devoured each episode, thrilled by his combination of mechanical skill, historical knowledge, and charismatic banter with colleagues. The program's ratings soared into the millions, and Drew's personal brand became synonymous with British salvage adventures, but fame carried hidden costs. Rigorous filming schedules left little time for family, and personal relationships frayed. Weekend digs with friends were replaced by cross-country treks timed to production calendars. He weathered harsh criticism as fans scrutinized every misstep, magnifying minor errors into major scandals. Tabloid headlines called him the Prince of Rust one week, Puppet Master next, but fame's bright lights often cast the darkest shadows. By 2013, Salvage Hunters had reached its 100th episode, and Drew stood on a pedestal few could imagine. Viewers tuned in the millions to watch him traverse collapsing estates, negotiate with demolition crews, and produce dramatic finds like a long-lost stained glass window from a ruined Victorian chapel. Yet beneath the triumphant banner of success, Drew battled relentless exhaustion. He juggled cross-country travel, relentless filming schedules, sponsorship deals to negotiate, and the mounting expectation of outdoing every previous discovery. Weekends once reserved for family trips and quiet restoration projects were swallowed by production demands. His wife Rebecca and their children saw him in fleeting bursts, a narrated clip here, a pre-recorded segment there, but never the father and husband who had once hosted Sunday dinners in their chapel home. The relentless pace took its toll. In between frantic salvage hunts and late-night editing sessions, Drew began to feel the weight of every camera lens aimed his way. He missed the intimacy of hands-on work, the satisfying rhythm of sanding a surface by lamplight, the soft glow of a restored lamp warming a silent room. In its place, he grappled with the glare of studio lights, the need for sensational hooks in every episode, and the creeping fear that his passion had become little more than a commodity for mass entertainment. Ratings soared, but each percentage point felt like a nail in the coffin of the quiet craftsman he once was. Then, in early 2015, the line between on-screen persona and real life blurred in a way no one expected. At a bustling antique fair in Manchester, Drew crossed paths with Amanda Thomas, a charismatic dealer known for her discerning eye and quick wit. What began as a friendly exchange of salvage tips and rare object rumors soon morphed into secret rendezvous, whispered conversations in empty exhibition aisles, evening texts laced with longing, clandestine dinners after the crowds dispersed. The affair blossomed quietly yet powerfully, fueled by the adrenaline of risk and secrecy. Rumors rippled among dealers, and within weeks, the whispers reached Rebecca. In a small Welsh village where everyone knew everyone, privacy evaporated overnight. The confrontation was as public as his television appearances. In January 2015, a late-night altercation at Conway's Liverpool Arms ended with security guards dragging Drew outside as a startled crowd watched. Local patrols banned him from 44 pubs under the town's pub watch scheme, effectively exiling him from the community he'd rescued time and again. Tabloids gleefully plastered his name with words like betrayer and fallen hero. Social media lit up with hashtags #SalvageGate and #RustBetrayal, dividing fans into opposing camps. Some defended his right to private folly, others condemned him as a hypocrite whose personal failings rendered his on-screen moralizing hollow. Every broadcast thereafter carried an undercurrent of scandal, forcing production teams to navigate a minefield of scripted drama and real-life fallout. By late 2017, the pressure had fractured Drew's marriage beyond repair. In a joint statement framed in the neutral language of legal separation, he and Rebecca cited irreconcilable differences. Behind closed doors, negotiations over assets turned bitter. Their chapel home, once a monument to shared dreams, became a courtroom battleground where photographs of stained glass windows and brass chandeliers were dissected like trophies. Custody arrangements for their children became public headlines, echoes of a family unraveling under the merciless gaze of fame. Drew watched with hollow eyes as the life he'd built fractured around him, an irony as bitter as any crushed relic he'd unearthed, yet Drew was nothing if not resilient. He channeled heartbreak into action, seeking redemption through the very craft that had defined him. In 2018, he released Salvaging Secrets, a memoir that peeled back the polished veneer of television fame to reveal the messy grit underneath. Readers devoured his tales of perilous excavations, near-death encounters with unstable structures, and hard-won lessons about stewardship and honesty. The book shot to the top of bestseller lists, earning $50,000 in its first month. Spin-off offers followed: classic cars with Pritchard, salvage hunters, global expeditions, each promising exotic locales and high-stakes bids. But Drew hesitated. The memoir's success reminded him of why he'd fallen in love with salvage in the first place: the alchemy of turning decay into beauty, the joy of discovery untainted by spectacle. In the years that followed, the Conway showroom that had once served as pilgrimage site for fans fell quiet. Tourism boards noted a drop in foot traffic. He closed the doors with little fanfare, retreating to a Georgian townhouse in Bath purchased during a fleeting high point. Even there, shadows of his past loomed. Renovations to the aged home revealed hidden rot and structural damage that swallowed budgets and tested patience. He confronted expensive repairs to plumbing and electrical systems, each unexpected cost a reminder that restoration is never finished and often fraught with setbacks. Then, in early 2024, Drew made the decision that would redefine his legacy. As word of a final auction trickled out, collectors scrambled to reserve seats in the renowned London auction house, one last chance to bid on relics he had curated for decades. The catalog boasted over 600 lots, a fairground boat from the 1930s, a set of vintage pub signs from small-town Britain, even fragments rumored to have adorned Buckingham Palace. As the gavel fell on each item, prices soared into the tens of thousands, a testament to his reputation and the shimmer of scarcity that accompanies any last opportunity. Yet behind the scenes, Drew watched each sale with a mixture of pride and profound sorrow. He knew that each lot was more than a transaction, it was a severing of ties to a chapter of his life that, once closed, could never be reclaimed. The final gavel fell on a crisp afternoon, and for a moment, earth-shaking silence filled the hall. Over $800,000 changed hands that day, but the true price was measured in intangible currency, memories sold one by one, the echo of laughter in his workshop replaced by emptiness. Fans watching from home saw a man bidding farewell to objects they had come to love as much as he did. They shared sorrow-laden messages on social media, posting pictures of their own cherished heirlooms with captions like, "In memory of the days when every rusted hinge held a story." As the lights dimmed in that storied auction room, it was clear that Drew's greatest find would no longer be a piece of history hidden in a barn, it would be the moment he discovered what really mattered when salvaging his own life. In the silent weeks that followed the final auction, a hush settled over Drew's world. The tools he once wielded with confidence lay dormant in dusty racks, and every empty display shelf felt like a canvas wiped clean of purpose. He wandered through the echoing halls of his Bath townhouse, memories of past conquests flickering behind each boarded window. Without the roar of the gavel to guide him, he confronted a daunting question: who was he when faces and fortunes no longer measured his worth? Friends and former colleagues offered sympathetic smiles and vague invitations to consult on new salvage jobs, but he hesitated. The bright glare of past spotlight burns was too raw to revisit without a guiding flame of something more authentic. One gray morning, he found himself drawn to the workshop in the rear of the house, a cramped annex where he had filmed countless television segments and chased epic auctions. The workbench still bore scratches and oil stains, trademarks of a lifetime of makeshift repairs. He unearthed an old pair of pliers and admitted to himself that restoration felt like coming home. He dug into a half-finished project, the 1920s railway lamp that had first reignited his passion. Its cracked globe and corroded fittings gawked at him like silent spectators begging for renewal. With steady hands, he cleaned the metal body, replaced brittle wires, and applied a fresh coat of lacquer. As the lamp's amber glow returned, so did a long-suppressed joy. This spark was gentler than the adrenaline of auctions, but it carried a warmth that neither fame nor fortune could supply. He started small. Each day, he restored one object and documented the process in a simple journal. One afternoon he polished a battered brass compass, another day he rehung a set of stained glass slats. With each task completed, he felt a modest triumph, the kind that grows quietly instead of erupting under camera flashes. Word spread among a handful of former collaborators that Drew was back at the bench, not as a celebrity hired to hype auctions, but as a craftsman rediscovering the essence of salvage. Emails trickled in from strangers, hobbyists with heirlooms gathering dust, museum curators with overflow archives requesting advice. He responded thoughtfully, sharing techniques he once guarded as trade secrets. His inbox became a ledger of shared expertise, an unexpected measure of his real impact on the community. Spurred by that burgeoning connection, he hosted an informal gathering in his backyard studio. A dozen local makers, students, and longtime fans gathered around rough-hewn benches, each bringing a piece in need of care. A retired millworker offered a rusted water valve that once regulated turbines. An amateur historian brought shoe molds from a World War I factory. Drew guided them through cleaning, stabilizing, and finishing techniques, marveling at how others' eyes lit up when they seized the same thrill he'd chased all his life. That afternoon wasn't filmed or broadcast. There was no producer to demand drama or a cameraman to hunt for sensational reveals. Instead, it bristled with genuine curiosity, hands-on discovery, and the simple pleasure of shared purpose. It reminded Drew that salvage's true power lies in community, not in solitary conquest. Encouraged, Drew sketched a bold new plan, a community workshop he called the Rescue Room. He envisioned long work tables beneath skylights, tool walls lined with salvaged hammers and brushes, and cabinets stacked with donated fragments from regional sites. He drafted a proposal outlining free weekend classes for families, advanced courses for apprentices, and special sessions for local schools. Drawing on his book sales and a handful of private donors he contacted personally, he allocated seed funds to rent a modest warehouse near Bath city center. He negotiated favorable rent in exchange for offering periodic open house days so neighbors could browse restored pieces and learn about the heritage in their own backyards. Every detail was guided by one principle: accessibility. As the warehouse doors opened for the public event, Drew felt his nerves flutter. He stood inside the space, the afternoon sun slicing through skylights and illuminating pallets of reclaimed wood, antique tile samples, and a row of maritime instruments mounted on plinths. Curious families, students, retired enthusiasts trickled in, guided by painted signs and the scent of linseed oil. Drew offered demonstrations: how to remove rust without erasing historic patina, how to refurbish brass without harsh chemicals, how to research the provenance of an obscure artifact. Children pressed small hands against textured metal, elders compared notes on Gulf War-era ship lanterns, and local journalists pinched notebook pages for a weekend feature. The collective hum of discovery felt like victory, a chorus of reclaimed stories singing in unison together. Following the success of that debut, Drew felt a stirring he hadn't experienced in years: the quiet satisfaction of heartfelt restoration, absent of camera angles and auction house jitters. Each morning he unlocked the warehouse doors and was greeted by long benches strewn with reconditioned timbers, brass fixtures, and ceramic fragments. Sunlight filtered through steel-framed windows, catching swirling dust motes and lending the space a sacred glow. He watched as a retired welder straightened a curved iron balustrade while a teenage apprentice matched century-old paint formulas. That unhurried enthusiasm reminded him of why he'd fallen in love with salvage in the first place: for the kinship it built through shared expertise and purpose. Requests poured in from unexpected corners. A local historical society asked him to restore a series of ornate door hinges from a demolished manor, while a young London designer commissioned him to revive a battered industrial pulley for a loft installation. Drew tackled each challenge with renewed vigor. He taught volunteers how to distinguish original patina from corrosive staining, how to lubricate moving parts without erasing character, and how to research provenance through old ledgers and oral history. He laughed with fellow artisans over mismatched fasteners and celebrated small victories, like the first time a restored pulley turned freely after decades of rust. As momentum built, Drew approached the city council with a bold proposal: transform a derelict railway shed near Bath into a permanent center for community-led restoration projects. He envisioned workstations under skylights, storytelling corners with projected slides of local heritage, and a library filled with salvage manuals and dusty archive boxes. Negotiations took weeks, rife with red tape and budget debates, but his impassioned presentation swayed skeptical officials. He emphasized that the project would preserve material culture, create apprenticeships, boost tourism, and strengthen civic pride. Eventually, the council granted him subsidized rent and seed funding, marking the rescue room's first major expansion. Preparations for the grand opening consumed Drew. He oversaw installation of ventilation systems safe for lead-based paint removal, mapped electrical circuits for specialized tools, and curated exhibits showcasing notable restorations: a salvaged pub sign from 1924, a mechanized automaton figure from an Edwardian fairground, and a cracked oil lamp that once lit a miner's lodge. He reached out to former TD colleagues to film short, unscripted segments highlighting hands-on techniques, deliberately avoiding sensationalized narration. His only stipulation was honesty: show the mess, the setbacks, and the unexpected triumphs of the craft. On opening day, the shed thrummed with life. Families brought heirlooms in cardboard boxes, rusted rifle barrels, broken quilt frames, tarnished candlesticks, to exchange stories with volunteer experts. A local school organized a field trip. Students measured exotic wood grains under magnifying lenses and sketched glaze patterns on chipped porcelain shards. Retirees from nearby villages gathered around a towering display of grain silo gears, tracing memories of summers spent scavenging scrapyards. Workshops filled each corner, from beginner seminars on sanding techniques to advanced lessons in metal arc welding. The hum of conversation blended with the clatter of hammers and hiss of air compressors, an orchestra of revival on full display. Amid it all, Drew found a serenity that had long eluded him. He spent afternoons sharing tea with apprentices, offering candid reflections on his own missteps and reminding them that failure often teaches more than success ever could. When a delicate corkscrew hinge shattered under pressure, he didn't chastise the volunteer, he showed how to craft a new one from scrap metal and encouraged experimentation. He realized that mentorship was his true calling, that passing on knowledge formed the enduring legacy he'd always sought. No gavel would ever replace this quiet transmission of skill, this gentle shaping of future generations. Months passed, and the shed became a beacon for the region. Crowd-funded expansions added a mobile outreach van stocked with tools and safety gear, enabling Drew and his team to offer pop-up workshops in remote communities. He designed salvage caravans that rolled into deserted barns, local fairs, and university campuses, inviting field trips beneath tarps and within rusted metal skeletons of old grain elevators. Each weekend caravan convened artisans from beyond Bath, a timber framer teaching mortise and tenon joinery, a glassblower demonstrating furnace techniques for replacement panes, and an archivist sharing methods to preserve paper records of this thriving network redefined Drew's legacy. His name no longer stood for fleeting television fame or sensational auctions. Instead, it became synonymous with community empowerment, sustainable preservation, and the belief that every object has a story worth rescuing. As dawn broke on another busy morning at the rescue room, Drew paused in the threshold, breathing in the scents of oak dust and machine oil, listening to the crackle of conversation. A soft smile curved across his face as he realized his greatest find was not in a collapsed warehouse or under layers of detritus, but in the living testament of collective passion and shared memory unfolding before him. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, and Drew found himself fully immersed in a life he once thought irreversibly shattered. The rescue room pulsed with purpose, its workbenches lined with artifacts waiting for careful hands to coax them back to life. He no longer chased the next big auction or starred in a high-rated episode. Instead, he cherished quiet mornings guiding newcomers through the first tentative strokes of varnish and the satisfying rasp of sandpaper smoothing weathered surfaces. It was a humbling reminder that the true reward of salvage does not come in dollar signs or view counts, but in the subtle transformation of something forgotten into something beautiful, meaningful, and alive once more. He soon collaborated with local museums and heritage organizations to host traveling exhibits that brought restored treasures to school gymnasiums, community halls, and rural fairs. A cast-iron generator pulley once abandoned in a Midland scrapyard gleamed under spotlights alongside archival photographs showing its original installation in a 1930s factory. Children crowded around, marveling at its weight and imagining the hands that turned it for decades. Elders nodded sagely as they recounted personal memories of similar machines humming in their youth. These events became celebrations of collective memory, uniting generations and reminding everyone that salvage is about more than objects. It is about the stories they carry and the connections they forge between past and present. Meanwhile, Drew began to heal personally. He reconnected with his children in quiet workshops designed just for families, offering afternoon sessions where parents and kids collaboratively restored simple heirlooms, a chipped ceramic plate here, a tarnished silver spoon there. Laughter echoed through the open bays as they sanded, filed, and painted side by side, forging new memories in place of old regrets. Rebecca, initially skeptical, joined one session and watched as Drew guided their daughter through restoring a tiny wooden box carved by their grandfather. Witnessing that moment reaffirmed her trust in the man beneath the public persona, and for the first time in years, the family felt hope rekindled. Beyond personal healing, Drew's impact rippled outward. Local artisans credited his mentorship with reviving traditional crafts that teetered on the brink of extinction, from leaded glass restoration to wrought iron forging. A former student launched a non-profit dedicated to salvaging historic farm equipment, while another opened a woodshop emphasizing sustainable upcycling. Regional tourism boards embraced the rescue room as a cultural anchor, including workshop tours and promotional brochures and offering heritage passes that bundled visits with local museums and historic sites. Even urban planners consulted him as they repurposed disused industrial zones into creative districts, proof that the salvage ethos could reshape cities as well as objects. Looking ahead, Drew's vision continued to expand. He mapped out a series of mobile salvage labs retrofitted from shipping containers, each equipped with essential tools and safety stations so he and his team could host workshops anywhere, anytime. These sanitized pods could roll into rural villages lacking access to cultural resources, parking beside town halls and schools. He drafted curriculum kits for classroom lessons on material science and creative reuse, partnering with educators to integrate salvage projects into art and history courses. The idea of unlocking hidden potential in neglected objects became a metaphor for unlocking potential in people, an ethos that resonated with audiences across generations and geographies. Through all these endeavors, Drew discovered that redemption was not a destination but a journey. Each restored item reflected a step along that path, from the weathered railway lamp that reignited his passion to the kits donated for school workshops. He found that vulnerability, acknowledging past mistakes, sharing them openly, became a powerful tool for connection. In private reflection sessions with fellow artisans, he spoke honestly about the auction that nearly shattered him, the scandal that turned communities against him, and the long nights wrestling with regret. His willingness to embrace failure and transform it into teaching moments inspired others to confront their own setbacks with courage and curiosity. In the glowing ember of his regained purpose, Drew Pritchard stood not as a television star defined by headlines, but as a steward of history and human creativity. He measured success by young eyes lighting up at the sight of a revived heirloom, by the joyful surprise of retirees finding life in worn artifacts, and by the community bonds forged in shared workshops. His story pivoted from scandal and loss to a testament that even shattered objects and souls can find renewal through patience, skill, and collective passion. Restoration became not an auction block event, but a series of small acts that resurrect memory and hope. In that work, Drew discovered the true lasting legacy he was meant to build.